We all know the story of the boy who lived, but Harry Potter didn't survive 7 books, countless Pottermore spin-offs, and an infinite amount of Harry and Hermione, Harry Luna, and Harry Draco shipper fan fiction without the support of an interesting rogues gallery. Whether the Order of the Phoenix is fighting alongside fellow heroes, outsmarting villains, or navigating troubled times with untrustworthy allies, the magical world of witchcraft and wizardry is full of darkness to counter all of that bright wand light.
Put that light out!
And whether J.K. Rowling's fascinating, boisterous, and relatable characters are friends or foes, they all have incredibly complex backstories, some more messed up than others. Here are 10 of the most complicated and tragic origins of your favorite magical characters. And while you're watching, tap your wand on the subscribe button. It's the best way to continue watching all of Screen Rant's brilliant videos. Actio subscribe button!
My lord, I require your wand.
Voldemort. We all know he who must not be named is the ultimate monster. Growing more and more physically deformed as he aged, and the list of his crimes grew, his face started to resemble the snakes he held in such high esteem. But he didn't lead such an easy life to get to this point of villainy. The tragic past started with his parents. Tom Riddle Sr. was a local muggle boy, wealthy and attractive. Merope Gaunt was a defeated and poorly treated witch girl, and although they say opposites attract, Riddle Sr. couldn't muster the same feelings for Merope as she had for him, so it's believed she bewitched him with a love potion and conceived baby Voldemort. Merope stopped giving the potion soon after, in the hopes that Tom Riddle Sr. would come to love her as she was, but it was not to be. He left baby Voldy fatherless and destitute in the ruins of Merope's family hovel. Tom Riddle Jr. inherited the magic on his mother's side, as well as that family's hatred for muggles that Merope seemed too forgiving to possess. At the ripe age of 16, young Voldemort returned to the town of his birth, visited his father's well-to-do home, and inflicted a killing curse on the entire paternal side of his family. Grindelwald. Grindelwald is basically the Diet Voldemort. He's not as bad, but still evil. And he's a good lesson that you should be wary of any suspicious guy whose slogan is that he stands for the greater good. That can often mean that whoever is less than good gets trampled on the march toward improvement. Anyway, Grindelwald was just your average wizard next door. He grew up in Godric's Hollow and was neighbors, friends, and the first crush of Albus Dumbledore. The two hung out, planned and plotted their futures as powerful wizards together. However, their plotting included the eventual overthrow of muggles in favor of wizards ruling the world as a master race. If the events of the magical world are an allegory for the happenings of the Muggle world, Grindelwald's rise to power conveniently correlates with Hitler's. If that comparison isn't unsettling enough, Grindelwald committed enough of his own crimes to spend the rest of his long life, and then some, dwelling on them in guilt, while left to rot in the wizard jail of Nurmengard. Yet the moment about which he and Albus Dumbledore likely feel most guilty is that time when a three-way duel between young Albus, young Grindelwald, and Albus's brother ABERFORTH ended in the accidental death of Dumbledore's sister, Ariana.
What makes you think you can believe anything my brother told you? You know the time you knew him. Did he ever mention my name?
ABERFORTH Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore's brother ABERFORTH has even more messed up elements of his past than being witness to the accidental passing of a family member. Albus probably broke a couple teacher-student rules of decency when he confided in Harry that ABERFORTH was taken to court for practicing inappropriate charms on a goat. At face value, we can probably just assume that ABERFORTH was doing some simple magic tricks on whatever livestock might have been hanging around the family home. Besides, he'd witnessed some screwed up events in his childhood, and he needed some time to adjust. But there are some innuendos about certain men from the country and what might happen between them and goats from time to time. Rowling was likely referencing some tasteless joke with this throwaway reference to ABERFORTH's past, and yet, it wasn't just a one-time mention. Albus even said that ABERFORTH's favorite story as a child was the bedtime tale of Grumble the Grubby Goat. Albus Dumbledore himself was a pretty open and accepting judge of character. According to Dumbledore, it was all over the papers. But did ABERFORTH hide? No, he did not. He held his head high and went about his business as usual.
Have you heard Harry Potter's the new Gryffindor Seeker? I always knew he'd do well.
Nearly Headless Nick. Nearly headless? How can you be nearly headless? Well, Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington suffered from a failed beheading in which his head wasn't fully removed from his body. Instead, it now flops on and off his neck, held on by a flap of remaining skin. If this sounds disgusting, he makes up for it with his bright and talkative personality. With a death day of Halloween 1492 and his dangerously wobbly head held on by a half-inch skin hinge, you'd think much would be made of what caused his head to be mostly removed from his body. But J.K. Rowling never fully elaborated on this fact in the published versions of the novels. Actually, her editor had her remove an entire song that Nick was supposed to sing in Chamber of Secrets. In the ballad, Nick reveals that he came across a noblewoman named Lady Grieve, who believed that he could fix her crooked teeth. Instead of providing magical dental work, Nick ended up adding a tusk to her face.
He did not.
As punishment for his magical accident, Nick was sent to the chopping block along with an executioner's dull blade. It's a pleasant sounding song, but the subject matter seems a bit brutal for a kid's book, and it was cut out as mercilessly as Nick's head. FENRIR, GREYBACK, and REMUS LUPIN. Remus Lupin is a closet werewolf who befriends the students and breaks any negative stereotypes werewolves might face in the wizarding world because of his compassion and heroic actions. FENRIR GREYBACK is the exact opposite of Remus Lupin. He uses his werewolf's curse to help you-know-who any way he can, even targeting youngsters who could feel the same pain he felt as a childhood outcast. Speaking of the children, he had a direct effect on several major characters. He's the reason Bill Weasley's face was viciously scarred. He got excited over the prospect of making a muggle-born meal out of Hermione when she was being held prisoner at Malfoy Manor in Book 7, and he attacked a defenseless Lavender Brown during the climactic battle of Hogwarts. But bringing it all full circle, he's the same monster who made Remus Lupin into a werewolf in the first place. Lupin's father, Lyle, had made a disparaging comment about werewolves, and Fenrir attacked 4-year-old Remus without mercy. This event haunted Remus for the rest of his days. Fenrir, on the other hand, fully embraced his savage tendencies. There's a popular philosophy that we should all live our truth, and to an extent, that seems like a positive way of thinking. But most witches and wizards would likely be happier and healthier if Fenrir GREYBACK stayed in the shadows.
Give me the cup. Oh, pity.
Neville Longbottom. Neville is a klutz with a heart of gold. He doesn't often get a chance to shine, but when he does, either by standing up to Harry and the Sorcerer's Stone and getting Gryffindor House all those points, or by pulling the Sword of Gryffindor out of the Sorting Hat and beheading Nagini during the Battle of Hogwarts, he proves himself as the runner-up to becoming the Chosen One. You all probably know the tale. It was prophesied that the one to defeat Voldemort would be born to a powerful wizarding couple at July's end. Voldemort had to choose whether to attack baby Harry or baby Neville all those years ago. If he'd chosen Neville, the whole story could have unfolded much differently. Instead, his parents were tortured at the hands of vile Death Eaters like Bellatrix Lestrange. While Harry never got to know his parents, Neville's folks were locked away in St. Mungo's hospital, mere shadows of their former selves. It's their ability to endure hardship and pain in the service of a loftier goal, however, that likely gave Neville a reason to carry on. In Book 7, he continued to rebel against the Death Eaters who were in control of Hogwarts and fought on until the battle was won.
Good, I want to join. If Voldemort's raising an army, then I want to fight.
Sirius Black. There is a theme of tradition versus innovation in the Harry Potter series, as Harry's generation brings a lot of new ideas to the table, and it's ultimately up to the kids to save the wizarding world. Well, the new pack of rebels learned from the best of the old guard, and the coolest punk kid from Harry's parents' generation had to have been Sirius Black. But there's a reason he was so rebellious. The Black family tradition was dark, musty, and stifling. With an extensive family tree, many of Sirius's relatives were dedicated to keeping their line pure. Invested in the ideas of pure blood wizardry, many naturally joined forces with Voldemort and his discriminatory Death Eaters. It was a lonely existence being a Gryffindor in a household full of Slytherins. But it got only more lonely once he was framed as Voldemort's informant and locked up in the prison of Azkaban. While he was later vindicated by the good guys, his shady family never trusted him, burning his name out of the Black family tree. Then again, Would you really want to be part of a family that mounts the heads of house elves on their walls?
What would Dobby think?
Ready?
Ready.
Albus Potter. The stage play of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child introduces us better to Potter's children and centers around his son, Albus. But what made Albus, child of a loving family, into such an angsty teen? Well, growing up in the shadow of a famous parent and a successful older sibling could leave a child with a lot to prove. Harry told his son that it wouldn't matter what house he was sorted into, he would love him just the same. Unfortunately, being the only Potter sorted into Slytherin and not being very good at summoning spells or spinning potions leads to a decent amount of bullying. Albus seemed to only make one good friend at first, Draco Malfoy's son, Scorpius. But once the two kids got a time turner, their idea of fun involved messing with all the timelines. At one point, we see a world where Voldemort won and Hermione's on the most wanted list.
That's totally barbaric.
Cedric Diggory survived the Triwizard Cup and became a Death Eater, killing Neville in the process. And in another timeline, Ron and Hermione never got together. It's a time travel disaster that's so messy, it's a surprise Albus Potter has any friends by the end of it.
Dean, Seamus, good holiday?
All right. Better than Seamus's, anyway.
Dean Thomas. Okay, in the grand scheme of things, Dean Thomas isn't hugely essential to the plot, other than serving as a genuine acquaintance of the main characters and periphery member of the Order of the Phoenix. But originally, J.K. Rowling intended Dean to take on a much larger role, earlier in the book series. Born of a Muggle mother and a wizard father, his mother didn't know of her husband's magical past until he was attacked and killed by a group of Death Eaters for refusing to join their cause. Dean was brought up unaware of his magical blood until he received a letter of acceptance from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Mr. Thomas was going to learn of his father's past throughout the book series, but it was cut to simplify the main storyline and give more page time to Neville, which really is no problem for us. Dean, originally named Gary, was even supposed to help the main trio find the Sorcerer's/Philosopher's Stone in Book 1, but again, he ended up on the cutting room floor. When the director of the first two movies, Chris Columbus, asked J.K. Rowling for backstories on each of the characters, she provided him with extensive details on even the supporting parts, including Dean and his mysterious past.
Merlin's beard!
Merlin. Yes, Merlin went to Hogwarts, at least according to the histories Rowling devised after releasing the books. It's easy to imagine Merlin being a Gryffindor and supporting King Arthur with his bravery and magical prowess. In fact, it's hard to imagine any famous wizard not in Gryffindor, and let's face it, Merlin, Gandalf, Dumbledore, they all look and act pretty similarly. Surprisingly, Merlin was a Slytherin, and he learned his magical tricks of the trade from Salazar Slytherin himself.
Very wrong of you.
Although a close friend of Muggles at a time when wizards and average humans weren't separated by secrecy, Merlin didn't share his fellow Slytherins' taste for magical purity. In fact, the Order of Merlin, to which Dumbledore belongs, was founded for members who supported and helped Muggles in some way. What he did share with fellow Slytherins was a strong desire for power in a dangerous medieval world. And let's be real, no drama could match the soap opera surrounding the King Arthur legends. Merlin advised King Arthur, taught magic to his half-sister Morgana, had an affair with that same half-sister, became an enemy of that very same half-sister, and then became imprisoned in a tree by another sorceress, the Lady of the Lake. Like Dumbledore, Merlin had a much more complicated past than he'd let on. And that just about does it for this installment. As Dumbledore says, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. By dwell on dreams, we're sure he means it's no use spending too much time thinking about Potter's dark past when there are too many other videos to watch. Comment below and tune into the channel to Alohomora more content. These are fantastic videos, and Screen Rant is where to find them.